Danby is a senior in her last year of high school at the start of the story. She will be taking her university entrance exams in a few days. She struggles with arithmetic, though. The teacher is so annoyed by her constant dozing off during math class that he calls her to the board one day. However, she is unable to solve any problems as usual. He chastises her in front of everyone out of frustration. She disregards her studies when she gets home and instead plays with her phone and listens to music. Her mother observes her, irritated, and remarks that she would already be a genius if she solved math problems the same way she learns songs by heart. She jokes that no university would accept Danny in this way, and that she must have inherited her math difficulties from her father, who struggled with the subject as well. Danny is most irritated when her mother switches the TV channel to one of the historical dramas she frequently watches. After giving up, Danby walks out of the room and goes to her best friend's house. This is her last chance to get into college, her friend reminds her once more. She will have nowhere to go and no future if she fails now. Danny is already running behind schedule for the big exam after waking up late the following morning. As she leaves, her mother gives her advice, telling her to try her hardest so she can get into a reputable school. Danny is anxious, particularly about the math portion, but she makes an effort to study while riding the bus until she gets to the testing location. She leaves her umbrella behind and dashes off the bus. Fear takes over as she gets closer to the exam building. She's not prepared. She begins to panic and considers fleeing rather than confronting the prospect of failure. She silently sits in the pouring rain, wishing she could just vanish, her heart sinking. The rain has created a shallow puddle in front of her. She approaches it, and then an odd thing occurs. She sees a gathering of people praying for rain while wearing odd clothing. They claim that the drought is killing people and that it hasn't rained in 3 years. Danny abruptly finds herself drowning after falling into the puddle. However, rather than passing away, she reappears in the same location, albeit in a different reality. She begins to ask those around her if they are filming a historical drama or something because she is perplexed. When the king notices her odd behavior, he gets scared and yells, "Is she a demon?" Their fear is heightened when she nervously responds, "No, I'm just a high school student." However, the way she says it sounds to them like a magical incantation. She is suddenly surrounded by guards brandishing swords. The people repeat her words like a prayer, but as soon as they all raise their heads again, she disappears. She panics and improvises when she realizes the swords are real, saying, "I know why I'm here. Please, God, send the rain." She had already fled and continued until she came to a location with ceremonial garments. She enters a meeting with the king covertly by posing as one of the temple priests. The king abruptly declares during the meeting that in order to address the issues facing their kingdom, they must study science and mathematics rather than depending on superstitions. The chief priest, however, objects, claiming that this is dangerous nonsense, that math is just another superstition, and that equations cannot explain nature. He asserts that the king must perform a sacred ritual with the queen in order to bring rain, as the heavens are actually upset with him, and this is the true cause of the drought. After sneaking out of the meeting to find her phone, Danby is caught once more. She begins to consider the possibility that she might be able to flee when it finally starts to rain while she waits for the king to arrive. She is shocked, however, when the king informs her that it hasn't rained in 3 years. He doesn't like her, to be honest. He says she should be put to death right away. Trying to convince him that she is well-versed in history, she cries, "Please wait. I'm just a student from the future, and I came here by accident." She quickly adds that she's also very good at math when that doesn't work. The king is intrigued, so he delays the execution and instructs her to provide proof. He assigns her a problem involving the Pythagorean theorem. She initially claims she doesn't even understand what is written because she is perplexed. However, she solves it fast after realizing it's the Pythagorean theorem. The king is in awe. According to him, it typically takes his own scholars 3 days to resolve such a problem. Everyone treats Dani as a male scholar named Gosum from that point on. She is given a mission by the king. People should be taught math. If she succeeds, he'll let her return home. He is the first student, though, and she is surprised to learn that he is not even proficient in counting. She starts teaching him the fundamentals: numbers, addition, subtraction, and multiplication, patiently. They eventually get ready to compete in a math competition against another city musician. Dani will be disciplined if she loses. When the king makes a mistake, she defiantly challenges him and even strikes him out of rage. When she touches the king, the guards charge in, prepared to kill her, but he stops them and laughs it off. Every time the queen comes to visit, they hide all the math papers and pretend to be practicing music. The king invites Dani to join him for dinner one day, after noticing that she is starving, but she refuses and leads him to the kitchen. She prepares some tasty instant noodles for him using items from her bag. Despite their spicy nature, he adores them. He says he prefers the heat and declines her offer of water. He screams the following morning, and the whole palace can hear it. Thinking she cursed him, Dani discovers he has placed a protective talisman on his ear when she checks on him. She rolls her eyes and says, "Look, superstar, it was just noodles, not black magic." There was no magic or spell. The chili simply struck his stomach too forcefully. He asked, "What's a stomach anyway?" after she told him that. Dani then sat down and went over the definitions of the stomach, intestines, and even the heart, explaining that he could feel its beat if he placed his hand on his chest. But one day, when you're with someone you love, you'll feel it on your own, he said. "I don't feel anything." She smiled and responded, "It's okay." He began to regard her as a brilliant scholar after being astounded by her depth of knowledge. He therefore requested that she instruct all of Joseon's royal scholars, not only mathematics, but also science and agriculture. When he offered her a tangerine that evening, she said, "Thanks," without much fanfare, but he became very irate. "You are an outlaw from Joseon. You should have saved that fruit for 3 days at least. Blessings are not appreciated by you." Later, when they went out to play ball in the palace courtyard, she got him to run for the first time in years, and she laughed and said, "It's just a tangerine. Don't be so dramatic." The king sat with his future bride the following day and promised her that they would get married right away after he was given a magical love potion in his stew that evening. However, Destiny had other ideas. Danby ended up holding that bowl. She began acting very oddly and eventually dozed off in the palace. She kept apologizing to the king when she woke up, but he just said, "Nothing happened. Go, forget it." They went for a walk outside, and he assured her that she would receive a royal horse and a high position in the council if she succeeded in her mission. The king responded, "Then from now on, don't treat me like a king. We're equals, man to man." However, catastrophe struck the following day after she declared, "I don't want anything. I'm going back to my world as soon as the rain falls." Dani was arrested and accused of mocking the king. They tied her by the limbs, preparing to torture her. However, the king intervened and informed the priests that this young scholar possessed important knowledge. Dany persisted, but one priest took advantage of the situation and declared, "Okay, then I must test him myself. He has 2 weeks. If it doesn't rain by then, we'll execute him." She continued to study, doing all the calculations. She also built a rainfall gauge with the assistance of the palace musician. The rain suddenly started to fall from the sky. Danbei was overwhelmed with joy. However, the king abruptly recalled her statement that she would depart as soon as it started to rain. She was sobbing in front of the rain gauge, overcome with emotion, when he rushed to the house where she was staying. But she shook her head when he said, "You need to escape right now. I've been preparing for this. A ship headed for Ming is waiting for you. I've been running away all my life. My attempt to escape my world is the only reason I ended up here." The palace musician, who had been secretly collaborating with the high priest, showed up at that precise moment. The priest, who thought Dany might actually be from the future, had given him the order to murder the scholar. The musician put Dany on a horse and rode through the woods until they came to a forest, telling the priest, "If that's true, then he's even more dangerous. We must get rid of him." There, he told her, "I've known for a while that you're a girl, but I'm a decent man. Your secret is safe with me." She explained that it wasn't intentional. The job she landed was offered to a boy, and she had no choice but to take it. Meanwhile, back in the palace, the high priest tried to convince the king that everything Dany had taught them must be destroyed, especially the new written language she was developing. They had to stick to tradition and eliminate the boy's influence. But the king couldn't accept that. He left the palace on horseback, searching for her. Elsewhere in the forest, the guards finally caught up to Danby and the musician. He let her escape and stood in their way, fighting them off until the queen herself appeared, her feet bleeding. She had run all the way there, desperately searching for them. Danby kept walking along the road until she reached a fork and didn't know where to go. Then she remembered something the king once said, that the sun is Joseon's clock. So she followed the sunlight until she reached the sea. And there, the king was already waiting for her. That night, they sat side by side watching the stars. She told him, "In the future, we don't see stars like this. Only the most intelligent ones," he said. "Look now. Only the stars you choose to see are visible to you. But you'll notice more if you pause and pay close attention. Those stars were always there. They simply didn't show up until you made the decision to do so. The eyes see what the heart wants." After a quiet pause, the king confessed that he loved her. He said he wanted to create a new, easier language so common people could learn, not just the nobles. She suddenly remembered something, pulled out her money from the future, and saw his face printed on the currency. That's when she realized he really would succeed. When the king returned to the palace, he announced he would begin paying salaries to those who serve the people well. The high priest surprisingly agreed, saying that anyone who benefits the people should be rewarded. "What do you think of Goam?" he asked, but no one else in the court agreed. They believed Gossam should be banished or even executed. Still, Dany continued to secretly teach the king everything: math, writing, and reasoning, without the priests knowing. One day, while walking through the palace, she found the queen hiding and eating in secret. They had forbidden her from eating too much so she wouldn't gain weight and ruin her appearance. Danby offered her one of her instant noodle cups. The queen accepted it, and as they ate, they started chatting. From that moment on, they became friends. A few days later, the queen approached the king and told him she knew everything. She had already informed the queen mother too, because the girl Dani was supposed to be one of his concubines. Suddenly, Dani found herself being prepared for something she didn't understand. The palace maids were dressing her up and applying makeup. She had no clue what was going on until she realized they were preparing her for the midday rest with the king and that she was to become his first woman. The moment she understood what was happening, she panicked and ran away from the mad people around her. One of the headmates quickly informed the king that she had escaped on her way to the palace. The king went out to search for her and eventually found her, but he grabbed her by the arm and pulled her into a room. Dani screamed, protesting, "You said we'd stay just friends. I'm only 19. With a laugh, the king answered, 19. That means you've got at least 3 years of adulthood. You are no longer a child. In addition, I've known you were a girl for some time. I haven't touched you, have I? But you must remain here tonight. Everyone is observing. I won't eat you alive, so don't worry. To be honest, my mother is very obstinate and difficult to convince." Dani went to talk to the musician early the following morning. "Are you sure you want to go back to the future?" he asked, but she remained silent. Her heart was full of doubt and she was torn. She simply left and sat by herself. The queen eventually arrived and informed her that someone had expressed interest in seeing her. When Dani entered the palace, she found herself face to face with the queen mother, who looked exactly like her real mother. She started crying uncontrollably, and nobody knew what was causing her to cry. She personally contributed to the creation of Joseon's new astronomical system, which she saw that evening. Accurately tracking the days and months would be beneficial to the kingdom. The king then asked her to visit another project he had been working on. In order to make reading and writing easier for everyone in Joseon, not just the scholars, he had created a new alphabet consisting of 28 letters. He asked her to take a seat in the ceremonial chair as they entered the center of the Great Hall. Then, as a sign of marriage, he put the royal hairpin on her head and proposed to her, asking her to be his wife forever. The king said gently, "Then go see her and come back. Let's live here together." Danbei began to cry and said, "I can't. I promised myself I'd go back once the rain comes. My mother is waiting for me, and she trusts me." However, she refused once more. He lost his patience and said angrily, "You're right. The future is better than this, Joseon, full of sickness and disease. Do whatever you want." Then he stormed off, heartbroken. She stood motionless in the hallway until she was abruptly hit in the head and rendered unconscious. The whole building caught fire after someone stabbed her with a sword. The king risked his life to run through the flames to save her after learning of what had happened. The ancient text disappeared last night. He accused the high priest of stealing it, and he called his assistant the following day. "Did no one teach you to erase all evidence after committing a crime like this?" the king asked, taking the priest by the hand. He then turned to face Dani and asked, "Was this the voice you heard?" She nodded. As it happened, she had been protected from the stab by the book in her bag. The priest was confronted by the enraged king. The priest said icily, "You understood what he meant to me. Why did you do this?" "Because if that new language spreads, young people will start thinking freely. It'll create chaos. It will destroy the kingdom. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of the disorder that will ruin the future." The king replied, "Even if you try to stop it, I will build this system of writing for the people. I want to be someone who makes their dreams possible. Why should we fear a future we won't even live to see, a world we know nothing about?" But the priest wasn't moved. He fell to his knees and said, "Please execute me and end this." Soon the sky turned gray and rain began to fall, just lightly at first. Dani went around the palace saying goodbye to her friends one last time before leaving. The king asked if he could walk with her to the farthest point. They walked side by side until they reached the seashore. There, Dani stepped into the same pond she had once fallen into and allowed herself to sink again, just like before. Moments later, she emerged again, back in her own world. She looked around and realized that only a few seconds had passed. There was still time to make it to the exam. She ran as fast as she could toward the test hall and saw her teacher waiting. The entrance exam had just started. She rushed to her seat and took the test. Later that day, she returned home and found her mother waiting for her. She ran into her arms, holding her tightly. Everything about Dani had changed. Her behavior, her perspective, everything had shifted after her journey. She had learned to value the people and things around her more deeply. Months passed. One day, as she walked out of school, the sky opened up and rain began to fall again. Suddenly, someone placed an umbrella over her head. She looked up and saw a face strikingly familiar. He looked exactly like the king of Joseon, but he simply smiled and said, "We met a long time ago on the bus." The story ends there. If you've read all the way through, please share your thoughts in the comments section and let us know what you would like us to highlight in the next video. You dropped your umbrella.